Welcome back to the program. Chad's got first one.
Morning, Chad.
Good morning, Senator. On the road funding package, why did truck weights not make it into this package of bills? It was bandied about for the last couple of years. Why did that not make it here?
Oh, well, we ended up with most people wanted to see it on registration fees and fuel tax. There was a deal that we were working on earlier with the quadrant that included some of those things, but they didn't make the cut.
And why did it not make the final cut?
Well, it's simple, counting to 54 and 20. How do you get those votes?
So if you put the trucks in, you would have lost?
It would have been more difficult. I don't know.
If there was one thing you could change about this deal, what would it be?
Move the tax breaks up, and I think we'll be able to do that in the future. If the economy grows at the rate we hope it grows, we'll want to make sure that the folks that have generated that revenue for the state get to have it back.
And people say that you're going to be starving higher education, public safety when you do that, taking more money away from the general fund. Aren't you concerned about that?
Well, I think we've shown in the last 3 budgets we've taken general fund money and put it towards roads. Almost $1 billion over the last 3 budgets. And we still funded higher ed, we still funded K-12 education, and we still funded our medical and other things and public safety. So I think very, very creative people on our appropriations group are going to find a way to do it, and with continued growth in the economy.
Will you promise not to hit education, public safety, and public health?
I will say that the appropriations group will make those decisions and come to us with a recommendation.
Well, that didn't sound like a promise.
Well, I'm not going to promise anything. It's like somebody saying I'm going to promise whatever in the future that I don't have total control over. We have an appropriations process that goes through, and we prioritize the spending.
So those areas are at risk?
Well, they're priorities for us. There have always been priorities for Republicans and Democrats. I'm not saying it's partisan, but those are priority areas. We want to make sure that we fund them appropriately.
If you get a surplus cash, this revenue, this fiscal year, would you put that towards roads next year?
I would have to talk with my caucus members, but I think that would be the direction they'd like to go. Again, almost $400 million of the budget we started in October 1 is being spent right now.
Do you agree with the governor that you need to bond next year?
Yeah, it was a surprise to me that he had mentioned that. I would hope that's not where we go. Wouldn't be on the top of my list to go borrow more money. That's where we got in trouble over the last
He didn't give you a heads up that was coming?
I did not hear from him about that prior. No.
Well, what's wrong with bonding?
I would just say part of the problem we got into is we borrowed too much money over a couple of administrations. I'm not absolving anybody of blame or credit here. But then when our economy didn't perform, then we couldn't meet those obligations. But now, subsequent to that, because we have about a $43 million bill every year to pay on those bonds, we've actually increased that. Now we're going to pay about $50 or $51 million to try to pay that down faster.
And so here he comes along adding more to that.
Yeah, that would not be my preference, and I don't believe my caucus would be supportive of that either.
Would you say that's fiscally irresponsible?
I wouldn't say that. I would say that's an idea to be used, but that wouldn't be one that I would be on top of my list.
You wouldn't say that, but you would think it.
I don't know, Tim. It surprised me that he said it. I would prefer to pay as we go, raise the money, because we kept it to as close to user fees as we could, and then let's use the money to build our roads and fix our roads.
But, Senator, you would agree the roads are bad and getting worse, would you?
Well, I would say they've been getting worse, and we have some critical areas and bridges and some other places that we need to address right away.
And there was $400 million taken from the general fund this year. People don't seem to be noticing an impact, and we're not going to get any more than that next year. So how
But you don't know that we're going to get any more than that next year.
Well, based on the plan that was passed.
Again, but you just asked earlier about if there's more general fund money, would I put it towards that? Yeah, I probably would. When we talk to our public, they firmly believe this is the #1 issue in all of Michigan. So let's address it and continue to do it in a fiscally responsible way so we don't break the budget on other promises that we've made in education and public safety.
Senator, you were considering a road fix last December in the lame duck session, and before you agreed to put Proposal 1 on the ballot in May. How close did you come then, and what were you discussing then that was different than what finally passed just this week?
It's pretty similar. It's pretty similar to what we were discussing before.
So you came very close last December to maybe passing something like what you just passed on Tuesday.
Again, I wasn't in the room where the last 4 or 5 people met to put the deal together, but my understanding was, yes, we're very, very close to that.
Do you agree with Mr. Cotter that the Ds didn't want a deal for political purposes?
I think if we look at their behavior, that would tell everybody they really didn't want to solve the road problem. And unfortunate, I think, for the citizens of Michigan, we had a pretty good bipartisan plan that we're working on, and we swung and missed. We didn't get there on that plan.
You think one of the reasons that you finally got it through, not so much the Senate, was because you had a short House, of which you used to be a member but aren't anymore, because you had 3 less members, so they only needed 54, 55 votes, and they needed every single one of them to get it through the House?
That may be part of it, but I also think folks in the House, and I give Speaker Cotter a lot of credit. I mean, the guy really stepped up. It's big time. And he reiterated to his members, look, there's billions of dollars already invested in roads and infrastructure. And if you don't simply maintain it, you're wasting taxpayer money. We have to do something better than what we've been talking about. And I give him a lot of credit for getting it done.
Senator, let me bring you back to the Democrats not wanting to play ball. Do you have any evidence of that other than just a gut feeling?
Not just a gut feeling. And again, we went about finding the way to get the votes done, and we did.
Well, after the quadrant talks, quote, broke off, the D's said, let's go back in the room. They blamed Mr. Cotter for leaving and cutting off the talks.
Yeah, well, we got 54-20 and 1. The governor's going to sign it next week, and we have a road package that's a very, very good start on making sure that we maintain our infrastructure so our economy can keep growing here in Michigan.
Why did you delay the tax hikes to January 1 of 2017?
Yeah. When the House sent something over just recently, it was heavy on registration fees and lighter on gas, and then when we sent it back, it was the other way around. It did cause some consternation in the budget. We would have been a little bit short, so we moved the tax breaks out a little further. So it was basically a financial function. Again, if revenue continues to flow in at the rate we think it is, I think we can move those tax rollbacks ahead. That would be my goal.
Why don't you implement the gas tax next year?
54, 20, and 1.
Senator, please.
To get the votes.
That's right.
To get the votes.
Okay, because you didn't want to have the tax take effect just before an election.
Again, the Senate's not up for election, so it was not a consideration.
But you told Mr. Cotter you wanted to help him out in your private meeting the night before you got together. You said, we're going to help you guys out, get past the election, right? Isn't that what was...
I don't know. I don't remember you in that private meeting, so I don't remember that discussion.
Senator, the legislature is about to turn its mind to Detroit public schools, and after 6 years under an emergency manager, they've got a deficit approaching $300 million. There's an ongoing corruption investigation in the Education Achievement Authority. How has this government shown that it's any better at managing this than the local officials were that were in charge before?
That's a fair question. I think all of that, there's lots of blame to go around. But I think what's really telling is the folks that are generating ideas around the solution really want to have a solution that delivers education for these kids so that they're eligible and have the great ability to compete for the jobs that are being created in their communities. I mean, that's the real story here. People understand the critical shortage that we have there in education and accomplishment so they can be eligible for those great jobs. And there's going to be questions about governance and questions about debt and all those things and what happens to the adults in the equation. But and my caucus is more worried about the kids. How do we get in front of them a great opportunity for them to have an education, which will in turn help them get a great job?
Do you think the kids would benefit from essentially a vouchers program where they could just take the money and go wherever they want to go, private school?
Others have mentioned that's one of the ideas. But I also think that we have to look at what are the very innovative things that are happening throughout the United States. How are kids being educated? Even around the world, third world kids that are being educated and surpassing our kids. What are the techniques they're using? What are the things that we're doing? How are we teaching teachers in our colleges of education? The performance and results matter. I mean, if we're going to continue to do the same thing over and over in Detroit and expect different results, isn't that the definition of insanity? Vouchers? I would favor government being out of schools, period, because my kids went to parochial school and things like that. However, we have an obligation per the Constitution to provide education. We just need to do it better.
So you do not favor vouchers?
I think there's a limited opportunity for them. And I would probably more weigh on the side of a tax credit or something like that if someone is going to go in a different way.
Do you think Detroit kids have been so disadvantaged by this situation that it's worth putting more money into Detroit public schools than the rest of the state is getting proportionally?
Well, I can assure you that when we look at education funding going forward, nobody's going to lose money. Okay. but how do we fund what's going to happen in Detroit? And are those kids getting shortchanged? I think they haven't been given the proper opportunity. And we just have to create the right opportunity for them.
As we know, the governor's package today, $72 million over 10 years. Is that in trouble in your body?
It has a lot. It's a long hill to climb. We're looking at a bunch of different sources, and doesn't necessarily have to be school aid fund, but I think the opportunity, again, to take care of the debt, the governance structure, all of those things are there. But if we're going to do that and not expect some sort of performance improvement or the ability for those kids to be better off, then that's not a very good place to start.
So hands off the K through 12 foundation grant.
Well, I would say all of that is important for all of our kids. So how we break that up, or how we increase it, or how we do make those commitments are important. And not one kid is more important than the other, but we have to make sure that they have the best opportunity.
So you're not going to take money out of the foundation grant from other schools and give it to Detroit?
We don't know that. It's still up for debate. That's one of the things that the governor is posing. I'm not saying my caucus is supporting or not supporting that. Are there other sources of revenue to do it? Is it the right thing to do without some sort of attachment to making sure there's performance improvement?
Should the rainy day fund be a source?
I would prefer not to do that. That's what we're trying to do, is make sure when we build our budget and we're looking at the way people look at the state of Michigan's finances, we're able to say we're budgeting in a sound way. Helps us keep our bond rating low when local municipalities, school systems borrow money against using our good name in the state of Michigan. It costs them less, so we want to make sure we maintain that as well.
We've got 40 seconds. What's the chances you'll run for governor?
You know, I've made it to 55 years old without growing up. Most people say I don't have to. After you're 55, if you haven't made it there, you don't have to grow up. I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. It's pretty heady stuff from a guy from a very, very small town to have his name mentioned in the realm, and I'm very, very honored that somebody would mention it. Thank you.
So, probably not.
Again, I haven't decided what I'm going to do when I grow up. I really love this job. I really like doing this job, and I just want to do the best I can at this job.
Could you beat Bill Schuette?
I haven't been on a book tour, so I wouldn't really know.
Senator, thanks for joining us on our program. Also, thanks to my colleagues. Quickly, Bob Vanderlaan, former Senate Republican leader, passed this week. Our best to his family at age 85.
85.
Yep.
Yeah.
See you next week right here on Off the Record.